He bought a hangar for $1. The ancient warship was junk, but its guardian was terrifying. Old hangars and broken ships littered the crater where the spaceport had once been busy. Time had forgotten this place, and most people avoided it. But for scavengers like Ethan, forgotten places were gold mines. Ethan's boots crunched against the dusty metal floor as he walked past shattered hulls and twisted beams. His eyes scanned every hangar for something valuable. Most of the ships were ancient, corroded beyond repair, their engines cold for centuries. He had expected nothing more than a few scrap pieces. Then he saw the sign. Hangar 47, $1. He blinked. $1, surely it was a mistake. The hangar doors were rusted, hanging at awkward angles, almost ready to collapse, but curiosity pushed him forward. He had spent his life looking for bargains that could turn into treasures. A $1 hangar in a place like this screamed opportunity. Pushing open the door was harder than he expected. The metal groaned and resisted, but eventually it gave way, revealing the interior. The hangar was dark, dusty, and enormous, and inside, half buried under debris and chains, was a ship unlike any Ethan had ever seen. It was huge, longer than 3 city blocks, with jagged lines and an armored hull. It was clearly a warship built for battle, but it was old. Corrosion ate at its metal like acid, and the windows were cracked, clouded with age. Rust had claimed its wings and fins, and strange vines of electrical cables hung like cobwebs. Ethan's heart raced. This could be worth a fortune, he muttered. He stepped closer, ignoring the chill in the air. He ran his hands along the hull. It was solid, heavy, built to survive wars he could only imagine. But as he examined it, he noticed something strange. The hangar was supposed to be empty. Yet there was a feeling, a presence, like the ship was watching him. He froze. A sound echoed through the hangar, a low hum like a heartbeat. The dust stirred and a dim light flickered from the ship's core. Ethan's breath caught. "What the hell?" he whispered. The hum grew louder, resonating through the floor. Then a voice, deep and mechanical, filled the air. "Unauthorized entry detected. Identity not recognized. Leave immediately." Ethan jumped back. The voice was cold, emotionless, and powerful. The hangar seemed to vibrate as the words echoed again. I just bought the hangar," Ethan said, his voice shaky. "I'm allowed to be here." There was no reply, only the hum, steady and rhythmic, like a warning pulse. Then the voice spoke again, slower this time, almost curious. "New operator detected. Prove worthiness." Ethan froze. "Worthiness? I'm just trying to look around." But the voice didn't reply. Instead, panels on the ship's hull slid open, revealing glowing runes and circuits. The warship seemed to breathe, powering up, despite centuries of neglect. Sparks flew as ancient systems attempted to wake. Ethan stepped back, unsure whether to run or investigate further. He had always been brave, but this was different. This was alive, or at least thinking, and it was watching him. His curiosity got the better of him. He stepped closer to the ship's control panel, brushing away dust and debris. Screens flickered weakly, revealing schematics and star maps. The ship's weapons systems were offline, but the layout was still visible. Ethan's mind raced. Even if the weapons didn't work, the knowledge alone could be valuable. He tapped a screen. Lights flickered on, then a deep voice echoed again. "Human detected. Test will begin. Failure will result in termination." Ethan swallowed hard. Termination. He took a step back. He hadn't signed up for this. But something inside him, a mix of fear and excitement, pushed him forward. What kind of test?" he asked. The hum intensified. Then the voice spoke again in a tone that was almost amused. "Survival, adaptation, creativity, proceed." Ethan realized this wasn't just a machine. It was a guardian built to protect the ship at all costs, and it wanted him to prove himself. He glanced around the hangar. Rusted machinery, broken scaffolds, and piles of debris surrounded him. He had no weapons, no backup. Just his wits and courage. The first challenge came quickly. A panel on the floor lit up and a section of the hangar collapsed, revealing a pit filled with sharp, jagged metal. Ethan froze. He could jump across, but the gap was wide. His heart pounded, but he didn't hesitate. With a running start, he leapt across, landing hard but safe. The Guardian's hum seemed to acknowledge the action. "Good," the voice said. "Adaptation detected. Continue." Ethan moved cautiously through the hangar, every creak and shadow making him tense. He found the ship's cockpit door locked. Panels and wires dangled uselessly, but his hands moved automatically, rerouting power, following instincts. Slowly, lights flickered inside the cockpit, and the massive door slid open. He stepped inside and marveled at the interior. Despite centuries of neglect, the ship's design was breathtaking. Massive screens displayed star maps, weapon schematics, and energy cores. Controls hummed faintly, waiting for someone to command them. Ethan approached the main console. He touched a glowing panel. The Guardian's voice spoke again, calm but firm. Human shows problem-solving capability. Minor acknowledgement granted. Continue proving worthiness. Ethan's heart raced. He realized this ship was no ordinary salvage. It was powerful, ancient, and dangerous. But more than that, it respected intelligence and courage. It would respond to a mind like his, not just brute strength. He spent hours exploring, repairing minor circuits, connecting power conduits, and learning the ship's quirks. Every success made the Guardian's presence less threatening and more observant. By the time he paused to rest, he felt a strange bond forming with the ship. Outside, the moon was silent, but from deep space, a faint signal flickered. Ethan didn't notice it yet, but the Guardian did. It paused, hum growing low and thoughtful. Something was coming, something old, something that had waited centuries for this moment. Ethan, unaware of the looming threat, leaned back on a console and allowed himself a small smile. He had turned a $1 hangar into a treasure, and maybe, just maybe, he had found a friend. But the Guardian's hum remained steady, almost like a heartbeat, reminding him that nothing in this hangar, or in the galaxy, was simple. And for the first time, Ethan realized the ship was alive, and it would decide if he was worthy to command it. The hangar was quiet now, but not completely. The hum of the warship filled every corner, a low and steady sound that seemed alive. Ethan Voss sat in the cockpit, staring at the glowing panels. The first hours had been terrifying. The Guardian had challenged him at every step, testing his courage, his intelligence, and his instincts. And somehow he had survived. Yet survival was only the beginning. He leaned back and rubbed his eyes. "I can't believe I'm actually here," he muttered. "This thing is huge and alive." The cockpit lights flickered as the Guardian spoke, its voice calm, measured, almost curious. "Human, you demonstrate adaptability. But understanding is incomplete. You must learn the ship's purpose. You must prepare." Ethan frowned. "Prepare for what?" "For threats that remember, for enemies long forgotten, for war not yet ended." He froze. He had expected challenges, perhaps old defense systems or malfunctioning circuits, but threats that remembered? This was no ordinary scavenger's prize. This was a weapon built for a war that had faded into legend. Still, fear did not stop him. Ethan had always thrived on challenges. If the Guardian wanted him to learn, he would. He started exploring the ship systematically. Its corridors were enormous, wider than some streets in his old city. Dust and debris covered the floors, but beneath it, Ethan could see the signs of incredible engineering. The walls were lined with panels etched with alien symbols. Lights flickered as he touched them, and occasionally a holographic display popped up, showing schematics of the ship's inner workings. He realized quickly that the ship was more than just a weapon. It was a library of knowledge, storing maps, records, and designs from a war that had shaped entire galaxies. And the Guardian, despite its terrifying presence, was the key to unlocking it. The first real test came when Ethan reached a chamber containing what looked like the ship's central power core. The core was enormous, pulsing with energy that had survived centuries. Sparks danced across broken conduits and several panels hung loose, threatening to short-circuit. Ethan approached cautiously. "Okay, think," he whispered. "If I can reroute the energy, maybe I can bring this section back online." He traced wires, matched symbols, and slowly the hum of the power core grew stronger. Lights in the corridor flickered and stabilized. Panels on the walls blinked awake, displaying charts and numbers he could barely understand. The Guardian's voice echoed in the chamber. "Human demonstrates creativity, minor systems restored. Observe caution, core is volatile." Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. "Yeah, I got that," he muttered, stepping back. He had almost touched a live conduit. One wrong move and he could have been fried. But he also felt pride. For the first time, the Guardian's voice seemed almost approving. He spent hours exploring, learning small details about the ship. Its engines, although cold, had a design that promised unimaginable speed. Its weapon systems, although disabled, still had complex targeting arrays. And in the ship's database, Ethan found references to something called the Star Vaults, hidden caches of weaponry and resources left from the ancient war. He realized that whoever controlled this ship could control entire regions of space. And somehow, the Guardian knew he understood this. By the time he returned to the cockpit, the hum had deepened, almost as if the ship was thinking. "Human," the Guardian said, "you understand basic operation, but intelligence alone will not suffice. You must anticipate threats. You must survive encounters beyond this moon." Ethan's eyes widened. "Encounters? What do you mean?" "Signals detected. Unknown vessels approaching. Unknown objectives. You are advised to prepare." Ethan felt a chill. He had thought he had this place to himself, but the Guardian had detected something he could not see, and it was coming closer. Over the next hours, he worked tirelessly. He repaired broken consoles, patched wiring, and even managed to bring some of the defensive systems online. He tested the targeting arrays and practiced maneuvering the ship's holographic controls. Each small success earned a subtle acknowledgement from the Guardian, a shift in its hum, a tone in its voice, almost like a nod of approval. But the true challenge came when the ship's communication panel flickered. A faint signal appeared on the screen. It was distorted, weak, but definitely artificial. Ethan squinted at it. "Someone or something is out there," he said. The Guardian spoke, its tone now sharper, urgent. "Unknown fleets detected. Warning, these ships belong to the ancient enemy. They remember the war. They seek annihilation." Ethan's pulse quickened. He had heard stories of lost fleets, ships so old they were considered myths, and now the Guardian claimed they were real. Worse, they were heading toward this forgotten moon where he had just claimed a $1 hangar and a rusted warship. He took a deep breath. "Okay, let's see what you've got," he said, determination growing in his chest. He was a scavenger, yes, but he was also clever. He had survived worse situations before, and he was not about to run from a legend. The next challenge was getting the ship fully operational. The engines were frozen, corroded over centuries. The Guardian gave him subtle hints, nudging him toward solutions that required thinking outside the box. Ethan rerouted energy from the power core to the propulsion systems, carefully avoiding damage. Sparks flew, lights flickered, but slowly the engines began to hum with life. The Guardian's voice, calm but approving, spoke. "Operational capacity, partial. Human ingenuity confirmed. Prepare for engagement." Engagement. Ethan shivered. The unknown fleets were approaching. He had just begun to understand this ship, but he had no choice. Survival depended on quick thinking, and perhaps on earning the Guardian's trust completely. He moved through the ship, checking weapon arrays. Most were offline, but he discovered a few systems could be revived with clever improvisation. He rigged old lasers to fire in defensive patterns, and even managed to stabilize the ship's shield generators. The Guardian observed silently, occasionally guiding him with cryptic advice. Hours passed. By the end, Ethan was exhausted, covered in sweat and grime, but he had accomplished what no ordinary human could. The ship was alive. The engines thrummed with potential energy. The weapons could fire, albeit imperfectly. And the Guardian, once terrifying and cold, now regarded him with a quiet respect. "Human," it said finally, almost warmly, "you may not be ready for war, but you have potential, survival probability increasing." Ethan sat in the cockpit, staring at the control panels, his mind racing. He had not only claimed a $1 hangar, but had also awakened a warship older than any human memory. He had survived the first trials of its Guardian, and he had learned that human ingenuity, creativity, adaptability, courage was the key to commanding it. And yet outside, the signals continued to pulse. The fleets were coming. And when they arrived, there would be no second chances. Ethan clenched his fists. "Bring it on," he whispered. "Let's see what humans can do." For the first time, the Guardian's hum softened, almost like a heartbeat. And together, man and machine prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. Ethan Voss had never felt so alive and so afraid at the same time. The hangar was quiet, the hum of the warship steady, but he knew the silence would not last. The signals the Guardian had detected were growing stronger, and somewhere out in space, the enemy fleet was coming closer. He stood in the cockpit, hands on the controls, staring at the star map projected before him. Faint dots, tiny but ominous, moved toward the moon. Ancient warships, far older than any human memory, were on their way. They were intelligent, deadly, and relentless. And the Guardian had made it clear, survival would not be easy. But Ethan was ready, or at least he had to be. The Guardian's first test. The Guardian's voice broke the tension. Human, the first trial begins. You must demonstrate control over the vessel and the systems. Failure will result in termination. Ethan swallowed hard. Termination, right, he muttered. He had survived the hangar tests, fixed broken systems, and even partially restored the engines, but this was different. This was the ship speaking clearly. It was no longer a passive challenge. It demanded mastery. A holographic simulation flickered into life. It showed a fleet of enemy ships surrounding the warship. The Guardian's instructions were simple in words but impossible in execution. Maneuver the ship through an asteroid field while defending against attacks and keeping all systems operational. Ethan's heart raced. He had never piloted anything this massive. The holographic controls felt real, but he knew the Guardian was evaluating every decision. A wrong move could mean failure. He gritted his teeth and began. Steering the ship through narrow asteroid corridors, rerouting power to shields, and targeting multiple simulated enemies at once pushed him to his limits. His hands moved faster than his mind sometimes, but instinct and human creativity kicked in. When the simulation ended, the Guardian's voice was calm but approving. Survival and adaptability confirmed, minor skill deficiency detected, continue improvement. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He had passed, but he knew this was just the beginning. Learning the ship's secrets after the simulation, Ethan explored deeper sections of the ship. Corridors twisted like a maze, and hidden rooms contained technology that human engineers had never seen. Massive energy conduits ran along the walls, humming with power. Ancient weapons covered in dust and rust seemed dormant but alive. He found a room labeled Vault Access. Inside were detailed schematics of the star vaults, hidden caches of weapons and supplies scattered across nearby star systems. The Guardian's voice spoke quietly, almost like a whisper. These vaults are not accessible without risk. Human decisions will determine outcome. Ethan understood. These vaults could give him immense power, but accessing them would be dangerous. Other scavengers or enemy fleets could be nearby, and the ship itself demanded intelligence and caution. Still, he couldn't resist. The idea of human ingenuity unlocking secrets no one had touched for centuries was too tempting. Unexpected visitors. As Ethan was mapping the vault locations, a loud alarm blared. Red lights flashed across the cockpit. The Guardian's voice was sharper now. Warning, unauthorized vessels approaching, detection imminent. Ethan ran to the viewport. Through the dusty haze of space, he could see two small but armed ships moving toward the hangar. Pirates, opportunists, humans like him but greedy and reckless. They had heard rumors of the warship and were coming to claim it or destroy it. Ethan's pulse quickened. He wasn't ready for combat, not fully, but he had to defend the ship. The Guardian spoke almost like a partner now. Use environment, use ship systems, show ingenuity. Ethan didn't hesitate. He activated the partially restored weapon systems, rerouted energy to shields, and used the hangar itself as a trap. Hidden pistons, old automated doors, and falling debris became tools. The pirates charged forward, but Ethan anticipated their every move. He activated a trap that sent a cascade of metal panels swinging across their path. One ship spun out of control, and the other barely escaped the collapsing hangar. The Guardian's hum filled the hangar, approving. Human creativity observed, potential for command confirmed. Ethan leaned against a console, breathing heavily. He had survived his first real battle. The ship was powerful, but more importantly, it responded to human ingenuity, not just programming. The Guardian's moral test after the battle, the Guardian presented a new challenge. A small section of the ship's AI core had been damaged, and it required a choice. Repair it using a risky method that could harm Ethan, or leave it offline and lose some capabilities. Ethan hesitated. Human instinct screamed to protect himself, but the Guardian's voice echoed in his mind. Decision will define worthiness, courage and foresight required. He studied the schematics, weighing the options. The risk was high. If he miscalculated, the energy feedback could injure him, but leaving it unrepaired would limit the ship's defenses. Finally, he made his choice. He carefully rerouted power, monitored the energy flow, and repaired the core using his own hands, close enough to feel the ship's pulse through the metal floor. Sparks flew, but the system hummed to life. The Guardian's approval was immediate. Human demonstrates courage. Worthiness increased. Ethan smiled faintly. Guess we're learning to trust each other. Enemy fleet approaches hours later. Ethan was back in the cockpit, monitoring sensors. The distant blips had multiplied. The enemy fleet was real, ancient warships, and they were heading toward the hangar. Their designs were alien, sleek, and deadly, but they were predictable, and humans excelled at unpredictability. The Guardian spoke quietly. They are following patterns. Humans are unpredictable. Use this. Ethan nodded. I think I understand. He began planning. Using the hangar's traps, the ship's restored systems, and clever maneuvers, he could create advantages where brute force alone would fail. His mind raced with possibilities. The enemy might have better weapons, better technology, but humans had something no machine could predict: creativity and courage under pressure. A new understanding. By the end of the day, Ethan felt a strange connection with the ship. The Guardian no longer spoke in commands or warnings. Its voice had subtlety now, almost like guidance. Human, capable, potential recognized, but war approaches. Be ready. Ethan leaned back in the pilot's chair, exhausted but exhilarated. He had survived simulations, defended the hangar, repaired systems under risk, and learned the first secrets of the warship. He realized something important. The Guardian did not just test strength or skill. It tested human ingenuity, courage, and decision-making. Humans were unpredictable, clever, dangerous in ways machines could not calculate, and that was exactly why he was being trusted. Outside the hangar, the stars were quiet, but the blips of the enemy fleet continued to grow. Ethan knew the real challenges were coming. Not simulations, not isolated pirates, but the ancient ships that remembered the old war coming to finish what had been started centuries ago. Ethan clenched his fists, determination shining in his eyes. We'll show them what humans can do, he whispered. Let's see if they remember that humans fight smarter than machines. And the Guardian's hum, deep and steady, seemed to agree. Together, they were ready to face what was coming. The stars outside the hangar were no longer silent. Small blips of light had grown into enormous shapes. The ancient enemy fleet. Long-forgotten warships, cold and sharp, cut across space like predators returning to claim their prey. Their designs were elegant but deadly, crafted by a civilization that had mastered war long before humans walked among the stars. Ethan Voss sat in the cockpit of the ancient warship, his hands trembling slightly, but his eyes were sharp. The Guardian's hum filled the air, steady and commanding. This was it, the real test, the first encounter with the enemy fleet, and for the first time Ethan understood why the ship had chosen him. Human, the Guardian said, its voice calm but firm, they are approaching fast. Probability of success low if standard methods are used, adaptation and unpredictability required. Ethan nodded, gripping the controls. Then we'll do what humans do best, he whispered. We'll fight smart. The first strike, the enemy ships entered the system with quiet menace. They scanned the hangar, analyzing patterns, their weapons glinting under distant starlight. Ethan activated the warship's shields and powered the partially restored weapon systems. His mind raced. He could not rely on brute force. These ships were designed to outgun him, outmaneuver him. But humans had something the enemy could not calculate: creativity, improvisation, and risk-taking. Ethan initiated a bold plan. He made the warship appear to retreat, slowly moving backward through the asteroid field surrounding the moon. The enemy followed, thinking the human pilot was inexperienced, but the warship was far from defenseless. Using the hangar as a guide, Ethan set traps, ancient automated turrets, collapsing metal beams, and magnetic pulses designed centuries ago to protect the ship. The first wave of enemy drones moved into the trap and were shredded by debris and energy bursts. Human action successful, the Guardian's voice noted. Ingenuity observed, probability of survival increased. Ethan felt a surge of confidence. The Guardian was no longer just a guardian, it was a partner, and together they were about to show what humans could do. Outnumbered but not outwitted, the main fleet soon realized the trap and adjusted their attack patterns. Heavy cruisers moved in, bristling with weapons far more advanced than anything Ethan had ever seen. But he had one advantage: the enemy expected predictable tactics. Ethan's mind worked quickly. He rerouted power to the engines, not just to move faster, but to create bursts of light and energy that confused enemy sensors. He fired weapon volleys at points where they least expected them, drawing attention away from real attacks. The Guardian guided him with subtle advice, highlighting weak points and patterns, but it was Ethan's decisions that turned the tide. He initiated maneuvers that a machine alone could not calculate, weaving through asteroids, using gravitational pull to swing the ship around, even tricking enemy targeting systems by cutting power at critical moments. The enemy fleet began to falter. Their precision could not match human unpredictability. Every time they tried to anticipate Ethan's moves, he did something unexpected. Human actions, efficient beyond calculated parameters, the Guardian said. Probability of victory rising. Ethan smiled. That's right. We're unpredictable. We're human. The heart of battle, the battle escalated. One of the enemy's heavy cruisers broke formation and headed straight for the hangar, aiming to destroy it before Ethan could escape. There was no time for conventional attacks. Ethan had to improvise. He scanned the hangar and saw the old scaffolding and debris that littered the interior. Then an idea struck him. He drew power from the ship's energy core to the magnetic field generators, creating a pulse strong enough to attract and throw massive chunks of metal toward the approaching cruiser. The pulse hit perfectly. The cruiser collided with the debris, its shields failing under the unexpected assault. Ethan seized the moment, firing the warship's energy cannons directly at the crippled vessel. A blinding explosion lit up space. The Guardian's hum was almost triumphant. Human intuition effective, enemy fleet compromised. Ethan's heart raced. He was exhausted but exhilarated. He had turned the tide using strategy, creativity, and courage, all human qualities. The final confrontation. One ship remained, the flagship of the ancient fleet. Massive, imposing, and cold, it seemed to pulse with centuries of deadly purpose. Ethan knew he could not destroy it with a direct attack. It was far too strong. But he also knew one thing. The flagship was designed to expect machines to fight, not humans who think differently. He set a trap. He faked a retreat, drawing the flagship through a narrow corridor of asteroids. Then he cut power to the engines for a split second, letting the flagship overshoot. Using the warship's restored thrusters, he swung around, hitting a weak point the Guardian had identified. The flagship shuddered, systems failing under the unexpected strike. Ethan fired the warship's energy core in a controlled blast, disabling the enemy without destroying it completely. The remaining ships, seeing their leader incapacitated, scattered into the void. Human, superior adaptability detected. Enemy defeated, the Guardian said. Its voice held something new pride. Ethan slumped in the pilot's chair, exhausted but triumphant. He had faced a fleet that had been legends, using nothing but his wits, courage, and the warship's ancient power. Aftermath. The hangar was quiet again, but the hum of the warship was now different. It was steady, almost calm. Ethan realized the Guardian was no longer just a machine. It had recognized his worth. Together, they had defended not just the hangar, but the human spirit itself. Ethan walked through the ship's corridors, touching panels, feeling the pulse of energy beneath the metal floor. The ship was ancient, dangerous, and magnificent. But he had learned something vital. Humans could rise to challenges no machine or alien technology could predict. He accessed the star vaults, uncovering caches of weapons, energy cores, and resources long hidden. This ship was not just a weapon. It was a legacy, a test of intelligence, courage, and adaptability. And Ethan had passed. Outside, the stars shone quietly. The enemy fleet was gone, scattered, and weakened. The galaxy had not seen the last of them, but humanity now had a Guardian that could stand against even the most advanced threats. The Guardian spoke one final time. Human, remarkable. You have proven the potential of your species. Command accepted. Prepare for future challenges. Ethan smiled, feeling a surge of pride and purpose. Then let's make sure the galaxy remembers humans, he said softly. And as the warship hummed to life, engines fully restored, Ethan Voss looked out at the stars. He was no longer just a scavenger. He was a captain, a protector, and a symbol of human ingenuity. The galaxy might be dangerous, ancient, and unforgiving, but humans, he realized, were unpredictable, creative, and courageous, and that was something no enemy could calculate.